Good morning, and thank you for joining us for a live talk with Jen, who is the Education Manager at the Manta Trust. The Manta Trust is a charity that coordinates global mobulid, which is manta and devil rays research and conservation efforts. It's great to see so many of you joining us today, and we are sure you will enjoy this really interesting webinar. To celebrate Green Careers Week, Jen will give you an insight into the role of a marine biologist, and she'll also explain about career pathways for those seeking a career within the conservation industry. Please feel free to put your questions into the chat, and Jen will aim to answer as many as she can at the end of her talk. So that's enough from me. I will hand you over to Jen. Good morning, Jen.
Morning, Lisa. Thank you so much for the introduction, and lovely to come along and talk to all of you watching as well. Really delighted to be here to tell you more about the job of a marine biologist today. So I think with that, let's get going nice and quickly. We've got lots to talk about. To give you a little bit of context, I have come from an organisation called the Manta Trust. I'm not going to talk too much about the Manta Trust today because we want to look at job roles a bit more, but just to introduce us, these are the animals that we are trying to protect. We're trying to protect the manta ray. There are a couple of different species and many different species of devil ray, and of course the habitats that they live in. And so with that, my background is in marine biology, and I work with lots of people who are employed as marine biologists on a day-to-day basis. So looking at the job role of a marine biologist, I'm going to pose this question to you all. What does a marine biologist do? You know, when they wake up on a lovely Thursday morning, nice and bright and early, like we all done today, what are they doing today? What are they actually going to do in their day-to-day life? Have a talk maybe in your classes if you're sat with your class, or have a think on your own if you're on your own. What do they do? And then type your answers into the chat if you can. And maybe you come up with an answer quite quickly. That's great. Type your answer in and then go back and think again. Can you think of anything else they might do? I'm going to pause a moment just to let you gather your ideas and type them in. So hopefully we're starting to gather some ideas. Maybe we're starting to type them in the chat. And again, keep thinking. If you get to a point where you think you've got the first answer, again, go back. Can you think of anything else? Okay, how are we doing in the chat? Is there anything coming through?
Okay, Jen, so we do have in the chat, someone has put researching animals and fish in the ocean.
Lovely. So this is what we're going to talk about first of all, this word research. And of course, when we think of the job role of a marine biologist, research is really, really important. And it is definitely kind of the #1 job of a marine biologist. But there are lots of other things too, which is why I said keep thinking and keep adding those ideas to the chat. Is there anything else there at the moment, Sophie, or should we look at this job role of research first?
I think we should go on to the looking at the job role of research.
Okay, lovely. So you said looking at research with animals, or it could be plants or habitats in the ocean. And that is exactly right. You know, this is really the #1 job role of a marine biologist. So if I go back to the organisation I work for a moment, the Manta Trust, we are researching manta rays and devil rays and the habitats that they live in just means we're finding out more information about them. We're trying to fill in gaps in our knowledge, answer questions that we might have, and really with the eventual aim of helping to protect those animals or their habitats, or ideally maybe both. Now, you could be doing this in a variety of different environments. I know that when I was younger and I pictured working as a marine biologist, this lovely tropical scene that you can see on the screen is what I would have pictured. And for the people I work with, this is their reality. Our main project base is here. This is a group of islands, it's a country called the Maldives in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and it's our main project base. Here we get lots of big marine animals like manta rays, like sharks, like dolphins. Okay, it's a real kind of marine hotspot. And so the people I work with that are living and working here, well, they might be from the Maldives, they might be Maldivian people, which is really important. Ideally, we would want lots of Maldivian people working in this location, protecting their environment. But still, there are lots of people coming from locations all across the globe. And so we have people just like yourselves that have grown up in the UK that have then gone to live and work in this location for their work. And travel is always a big part of being a marine biologist. You know, it's often really important. So we're looking at this lovely tropical scene, but equally, you could be a marine biologist working in the UK. You could be a marine biologist working in the Arctic environment. You know, it isn't always this lovely tropical scene. It could be waters all across the globe. So what are they doing when they wake up in the morning? Well, they're getting up, getting ready, getting all their equipment ready for the day. And for the people I work with, they're then getting out and going on the research boat, and they're looking for those manta rays. And if they see them, they're very quietly and slowly going to get into the water with them. And they're going to go about doing their research, collecting their information. And depending on what question they're trying to answer, that job might look a little bit different. So here, what we see in the picture is Tam. And Tam is actually, in this case, just taking photographs of the manta rays. Because by taking a photograph of their belly, we can start to actually identify individual manta rays by looking at the spot pattern there. And then we can start to work out where those manta rays are going, how many of them there are, how many are male, how many are female. We can tell a lot just from a photograph. So that's the research that's happening in the photo, but it could be all sorts of different types of research that's happening there. And the marine biologists I work with, they do spend a lot of time in the water, as you'd imagine, but not every single marine biologist spends lots of time in the water. Some of them might be more lab-based and they might spend lots of time in the laboratory. They could be doing things like looking at plankton samples or looking at water samples. They could be analysing the DNA from different types of fish. They could be doing all sorts of things in the lab. Other jobs marine biologists do. I don't know, did any more come through on the chat, Sophie? Did anyone have any other ideas?
Sorry, Jen, it's just about the researching one that's come through.
Okay, no problem. So what we'll do then is we'll look at the rest of those jobs together, because I'm not really that surprised no one else has put anything else in the chat, because when you think of this job as a marine biologist, you do think research. That is number one, but loads of other things too. So going alongside that, I haven't included a picture because it's not very exciting, but lots of time on the computer. You are on the computer a lot, staying up to date with other people's research. So reading all these scientific journal articles that are coming out that other scientists have written. You're spending a long time looking at the data you've collected and analysing that data. You might be doing mathematical tests on that data to try and work out what you've found. And of course, there's no point doing all your research if you don't share that information with others. So you're going to spend quite a long time probably writing up your research in order that you can then publish it and share it with other people. And whilst we're talking about sharing information and sharing research, other parts of your job might be to do things like go to conferences like we see here and present your work to others so that they can learn about it too, and equally listen to other people's presentations so you can learn from them. You might write it up into a poster format and share it in this way, and again, try and get that information out there as widely as possible. If you are a marine biologist working with a university, teaching might be a large part of your job. You might be doing research for part of your job and teaching for part of your job, trying to give that information to people who then want to go into the field too. So this kind of confidence in presenting and teaching can be quite a needed part of the job. And teaching could go further than that. If you are, like we said, maybe on one of those Maldivian islands, I mentioned the need to get more Maldivian people working in this field to try and protect their environment. So maybe you're actually going into the local schools to try and encourage that connection from a young age. Maybe you're taking people out into the ocean and trying to give them some of those skills at an early age, like teaching them to dive. So that teaching could go quite a lot further too. And there are loads of other things which might go into this job, which are, like I said, they're not as important as the research. They're not the biggest part of the job, but they come up from time to time. So because from our marine biologists work with these large charismatic creatures, we get lots of kind of media requests, whether it's working with journalists, working with film crews, and again, really important for helping to promote that research and get it out there into the general public. So that is really just a snapshot. We could talk about the role of a marine biologist for hours because there can be so much that goes into it and it can be so varied, but hopefully that just gives a bit more of an insight. Now, of course, every job comes with challenges. And, you know, the role of a marine biologist is no different. There's always going to be challenges no matter what job role you go into. And so here I thought we'd go through some of those so you can see. Hoping that you can hear me okay. I'm going to carry on in the hope that you can hear.
We can hear you now, Jen. We can't see you. I don't know if you want to try and turn your camera on and off, but we can't see you.
Okay, I've just turned it off and I'll turn it on again and see if that works. And if not, I'll carry on talking. Okay, I'll carry on going. Let me know if you would like me to stop. So some of the challenges that might come into this job role, like I said, travel is often a part of it, and some people love the opportunity to travel, but it is not for everyone. And often you're working in very remote locations. You know, we see these idyllic looking islands here, but it is an island and they are small islands and you do not get the opportunity to get off the island very often. So if you're not someone that enjoys that small environment, then that can sometimes be really challenging. Salary can be a challenge. We often hear about jobs in science being very well paid, but jobs in science with animals are often not that well paid because they are very competitive. Lots of people want to work in this area with animals. And so the salary can really vary. There's no real easy way for me to give you the salary because it can be very different for different people. But I would say if your aim is to make lots and lots of money, then again, this is probably not the right job area. Because it's a very competitive career field, it can be challenging to get that first job. Often, even to get the first job, the expectation is that you're already quite highly qualified or quite highly skilled, and we'll come on to that in a moment. In fact, we'll come on to that now because the next challenge is that to get those skills, you then may need to have quite a period of volunteering before you get your first paid role in order to get your skills to the right level for employment. So that can be a real challenge. And then really the physical challenge. Our marine biologists that I work with, sometimes they're in the water for 7 or 8 times a day and the currents can be quite strong. So for those people, that physical level of fitness has to be quite high. Okay, so those were really the challenges that came to mind for me when I thought about that. But what are the rewards? Well, I'm just going to show you, hopefully, a video. There's no sound. But really, this is the reward. You know, if you are someone that wants to spend your time in the water with marine animals, there is no better reward than this. Every trip into the water is different. You might see a whole group of manta rays like this. You might see dolphins. You might see a whale breaching, you know, or you might have days when it's really quiet and you're just enjoying the serenity of the water. But it is a real reward. Every workday is different. Every workday is varied. And it is a job where you really have a chance to make a difference because your research is going to help protect these animals in the future. So let's just finish by looking a little bit about career pathways. I'm just going to have a look at the time. In fact, I'm going to skip this slide. and just look briefly with you at a typical pathway for someone who might want to get into this job role. So I started with college or sixth form because right now you're at secondary school and you're thinking about your next options. The most common route is to go and do A-levels. Doesn't mean it's the only route, but it is probably the most common route. And of course, if you're thinking about this job role, hopefully you are someone that enjoys biology because that is your #1 subject. So definitely biology in your next steps, whatever they might be. After that, when people come and say, what other A-level should I do? It's a bit difficult and it's not always set in stone. And what I'd always say to those people is actually go one step further and think about what you're going to do after college, because to be a marine biologist, you're probably going to want to go to university. And I would actually go already before going to college and look at university courses online and look at maybe things like marine biology or animal behaviour or even biology. There's all sorts of different subjects you could study and see what their entry requirements are. Sometimes they might ask for an additional science, so you might want to look at chemistry or physics. Sometimes they might ask for mathematics. Sometimes it's completely open, they just want biology and then some other good grades at A-level, and you might have more openness with your choice. So that is what I would recommend there. When you get to the point of thinking about going to university, it's good to know that some of them offer a placement year, which is a year in your university course that you can take out to go and work with organisations that are doing work you would like to do in the future. And we talked about how this is a competitive field. It's difficult to get your experience. And so this can be a really good opportunity to do that. Looking at getting scuba diving qualifications, you can do that already at your age. And it's something hopefully you would never regret doing because it's always going to be a good skill, even if you're just using it for enjoyment. And then really just trying wherever you can to get work experience. And so with that, I've put up a couple of slides that we can probably send out to you or link you to afterwards. There are lots of organisations, even just here in the UK, there's a whole list of them here, and lots of them offer various volunteering opportunities. We're not going to go through them all just because we don't have time, but I would recommend that you look up these organisations and look up their volunteering opportunities and see if there are any there that are suitable for you, maybe now, maybe in the future. And of course, looking at building up your CV, there are always other ways to get involved and have things that you could include on your CV as well. I always mention fundraising. A lot of marine organisations are charities, so we always look to see if people have fundraising experience. Every April-ish time, we look for schools to come and fundraise for us with our Cross the Oceans Challenge. We'll advertise that next year. Follow us on our social media and you'll see that if you're interested. Equally, we've just started looking for youth ocean ambassadors. These are teenagers, 13 to 18 years old, that will work alongside us to help promote marine conservation, and we will work with them to give them lots of skills as well. So again, look on our social media if you're interested and you'll find more details on those. Things like beach cleans if you live near the beach. There's also a website here called Zooniverse, which is a good way for you to get involved in science just sitting at home. Have a look at that if you're interested. But just moving on, because I want to leave enough time for questions if we have any, because of course that can be the most important part. If you are sitting there and you think you'd really like to do this, but you're not sure how, or you're just a bit uncertain about things, or you've got any questions at all, now is your opportunity. Feel free to pop them into the chat and I'll happily answer any that come up.
Thank you very much, Jen. That was so interesting. Such a rewarding career. We do have lots of questions in the chat.
Oh, great.
Yes, so I will hand you over to Sophie. And just before I do, apologies, we did have a few technical issues, but all back on good and working now.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Sophie.
Okay, so our first question we have got is, what is the main challenge you are facing today?
Oh gosh, that is a big question for this time in the morning. What's the biggest challenge we're facing today? Oh, I could pick so many. We could go down the climate change route and we could talk about how quickly things are changing with climate change, and the need to share that information, the need for action very quickly can be tricky. But also probably for me in my day-to-day job is the need for us to work globally. You know, we're very much kind of separated by the boundaries of our country, but when it comes to the ocean, there aren't boundaries. And so we really need to work much more cohesively on a global scale to solve some of these big problems that we're having.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I think you might have disappeared again, but maybe we can try and fix that while you answer this next question. Are there more opportunities to be a marine biologist overseas?
Potentially, yes. So in the UK, there are some opportunities, but we are quite limited, and a lot of them are often to do with fisheries and working with policy and fisheries policy. So it kind of depends what area of marine biology you're interested in, but certainly the answer may be yes, depending what you would like to do. Yeah.
Okay, great. How do you stay up to date with all the scientific discoveries?
Oh, that can be tricky. I think as you become more involved in the world, you find more and more ways to become up to date. So often organizations can send out newsletters where you can read their latest publications. Things like LinkedIn. I don't know if at your age you'll have come across LinkedIn or not, but when you're working, it's a great way to keep up to date with other people's work. Social media is really good these days as well for helping to find new publications too.
Okay, I've got a question. What types of things were you doing in the lab?
So I don't work in the lab, but we do have a couple of researchers that do. And actually their main focus of work is looking at the genetics of manta and devil rays. So I said earlier there are 2 species of manta ray, 8 species of devil ray. I mean, currently that's what we recognize, but it's really difficult to know when is an animal a different species or not. And so by looking at the genetics, looking at the DNA, we can help to solve some of those mysteries. So that's mostly what we do in the lab.
Okay, I've got a question here that's actually come from a school in the Maldives, Hoover School, and they would like to know what subject do you need to study to become a marine biologist? I think they're talking about for O-level students, so presumably what would be equivalent to GCSE in the UK.
Okay. So yeah, it will probably depend on what your curriculum looks like or what your kind of academic layout looks like. But certainly for us here in the UK and probably around the world, you know, we're always looking for biology number 1. Often, if you can have an additional science that is beneficial, but not always necessary. Chemistry is often quite good to go alongside biology. Again, maths is a really good one. It's not always necessary. I didn't do, here in the UK, if we're talking about A-levels, I didn't do maths at A-level. I only did it at GCSE, but it can be really helpful for you. And then, yeah, if you're looking at going further, you're looking at going to university, there's all sorts of degrees. You could go straight marine biology, but it does limit you if you then later on think you want to go wider than marine biology. You could just do biology, you could do ecology, you could do animal behavior, you could do some kind of marine conservation. There's all sorts of options now. Really, the options are limitless.
Okay, I've got a question here that says, how can I get a job abroad as a marine biologist? Do I really need internships and a dive master's certification, as many job offers ask?
Yeah, again, it depends what kind of job you're looking for, but certainly when we are looking for people for our marine biologist position, they do need to be dive masters for safety reasons. So you are looking at a high level of dive qualification already. And I've forgotten the first part, was it a degree?
An internship.
Internship. And again, yes, you may be looking at internships or volunteering initially. Sadly, it's just the way of the industry, and hopefully it will change in the future. But because it is so competitive, you are often looking at trying to build up your skills first through those types of things before you get that paid role. It's not the same in every case. Some people might get lucky and they might find paid roles without having to do that. But in my experience, people are often having to do that first. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of leading on from that question, what kind of work experience is useful before I finish my study?
Oh, so if you're at secondary school, really anything you could do that's kind of related to that is useful, because you're at an age really where getting experience in the water is probably not possible yet. You know, you could become a scuba diver in your own free time, and that would be great. But actually going out to volunteer with a company in the water, you're probably not at the age where you can do that yet for insurance purposes. So things like just getting involved with these conservation organisations in the UK. Can you join a beach clean if you live nearby? Can you apply to, well, I said we have this youth ambassador programme that we just launched, but other organisations also have them, like the Marine Conservation Society, for instance. There are things like youth, I forgot what it's called, like youth biology associations run by people like the Marine Biological Association that you can join. So really, I would say spend a good afternoon on Google, look up some of the UK marine conservation organisations, have a play around on the website, see what they've got for people your kind of age, and any kind of experience or evidence of your interest will be good at this stage.
Okay, so I've got the next question is every marine biologist involved in research?
Yeah, I would say if you're strictly a marine biologist, that their job is research. But I would say there are many people like me whose background is in marine biology, who started out doing research, who have now gone a slightly different path. So I talk about research a lot. I need to be able to understand it. Occasionally, I might still be involved in doing it, but most of the time now, my job is actually to work with school children or young people to try and get people more involved in this kind of area in the future, to widen it up to a bigger audience. Equally, there are people I work with who started out as marine biologists but now do a lot of the media work. So they're working with the journalists more often. They're working on our social media more often. They're writing news articles and producing videos. You know, people might start out as one thing and then have diverged. But if you're actually a marine biologist, if you're strictly still working in that day-to-day life, then your job is research primarily.
Okay, so I've got one final question. It's asking about writing a research paper. What to do to write a research paper as a student, but I'm not sure if that's at university level or as a school student. So maybe you can just briefly talk about that.
Writing research papers. So usually the process of writing research papers, if you're thinking about that, will begin when you go to university. If you are doing an undergraduate degree, you might be involved usually in your last year at collecting some research and writing a paper. And then you'll progress from there essentially. So, you know, you'll gain your skills at university, and then when you become a marine biologist, when you start working maybe within the university or elsewhere, it will become part of your job that when you conduct research, you'll then write up your results. So you're analysing your information so you can find out essentially, you know, have you answered your question? Have you found out what you expected to find out, or did you not? And then you're writing a paper to share that information with everyone. So you're telling them in the paper, you know, what you did, why you did it, what your results are, what we've learned from it, and what we should now go on to research further in order to find out more. I hope that answered your question. If not, please do say, but hopefully that answers that.
Okay, thank you, Jen. That's great. Thank you so much for answering all those questions, and thank you to everybody who's watching and putting the questions in the chat as well. I'm now going to hand over to Lisa, who's just going to finish up.
Thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Jen. Really, really interesting, and I'm well sure our audience has been inspired to hear about what types of careers are available within the conservation industry. So thank you again to everybody who joined us. Sorry again for the few technical issues. We are live, and enjoy the rest of Green Careers Week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.